The divorce of the Hollywood couple Tom Cruise and Katie Holmes has placed the Church of Scientology under unprecedented media scrutiny. In particular, its treatment of children has been in the spotlight following media speculation that the reason Katie Holmes left Tom Cruise was to protect her daughter from the religion. Jenna Miscavige-Hill, the estranged niece of Scientology chief David Miscavige, has said the organisation is no place for an innocent child. We're about to hear from a woman who grew up in the church. Romana Dienis Browning is a former Scientology executive. She was sent to a Scientology school as a child, joined the exclusive C organisation at the age of 15, but has now left the church. Romana, welcome to The Drum.
Hi.
What do you think of what Jenna Miscavige-Hill said, that Scientology is no place for an innocent child?
Oh, I think that's very accurate. Yeah, it's definitely
accurate in what way?
I think that it's one thing to be an adult and to make a decision about spiritual practice or a religion or something of that type, but it's a completely different thing to bring a child into that kind of environment where they don't have a choice about it.
Okay, one of the things that is a policy of L. Ron Hubbard's is a thing called security checking, and it starts at the age of 6 according to one of his policies. Can you explain to us what security checking is?
It's a way of basically finding out about your transgressions or wrongdoings or sins, depending on how you want to look at it, to unburden somebody.
So what kind of questions then would they be asking 6-year-olds?
All manner of things, you know, what have you done wrong, what are you withholding, things like that. What
are your parents doing?
Yeah.
That kind of thing?
Yeah.
Is it so they can gain information on other people within the church?
Well, it wouldn't be, that's not how it would be explained, but I'm not sure about that.
You weren't security checked until you were the age of 16, but you were certainly audited when you were younger. Now, auditing is the form of counselling that Church of Scientology uses. What kind of questions were they asking you when you were a child?
When I was a child, I had some auditing and lots of different things were covered. The thing that I feel was inappropriate to me as a child was that things of a sexual nature came up and I was questioned about this, and I found that very uncomfortable as a child.
At what kind of age were they asking you questions about this?
I was probably around between the age of 8 and 10. I can't remember exactly, but young, really young. And the person auditing me was a man of, middle-aged man, of 35 to 40.
And how do you feel about that now?
Now, reflecting on it, I feel like it borders on sexual abuse. That's my feeling about it,
And the Church of Scientology keeps all this information, don't they?
Yes, they do, yeah. I mean, it is confidential, but they do keep it on record. You hear that information is sometimes used against former Scientologists as a threat, that they can use that information against them. Is that the case? Look, I have heard that. It hasn't happened to me, but, I've heard that.
OK, let's talk about the C organisation, otherwise known as the Sea Org. It's the elite organisation in Scientology that you're a member of. Explain to us what it is.
It's basically like joining... being a nun or a monk or a devotee of a religion. So you're absolutely committed, you give away most of your possessions and you completely dedicate yourself to the service of Scientology.
And you live on about $50 a week and you sign a billion-year contract to join the Sea Org, don't you?
That's right, yeah.
Why a billion-year contract?
It's a symbolic contract because they believe in reincarnation in Scientology, and so you're dedicating not only this life but all of your lives for the next billion years to the service of the Sea Org.
There's been some speculation in the media that there were concerns that Suri Cruz would have to join the Sea Org. The Church of Scientology has said, well, that's ridiculous because she's only 6 and that we don't take people until the age of 16. What do you say to that?
I don't know what they're doing now. I know I was 15 when I was recruited for the Sea Org, so that definitely is younger than 16. I know of other people that were very close to me when I was a child that joined at around 12. And I personally recruited people when I was in the Sea Org that were children that were around the age of 12, 13.
So how are children treated within the Sea organisation at that age of 12 or 13?
They're treated like any other Sea Org member. So there's no differentiation between, ages.
So how hard do they have to work, for example?
Well, they would have a very similar schedule. I think possibly they would have a slightly less long schedule than the adults. My memory's a little hazy on that, but pretty much the same. Subjected to the same kind of punishments that the Sea Org? Explain to us the punishments within the Sea Org. Basically, depending on the level of trouble that you're in, you'd be subjected to things like heavy labour, segregation from the rest of the crew, so working in the engine room or the bilges. And
you have to run everywhere, is that right, when you're punished under the Sea Org?
On particular programs, on particular re-indoctrination programs, you have to run everywhere. You're not allowed to talk unless spoken to. That's more...
And dress in black, is that right?
That's the Rehabilitation Project Force, which is very specifically a re-indoctrination program that some people are put on.
Romana, the Church of Scientology has a policy called disconnection, but they deny that it exists. But you're going through something related to disconnection at the moment, aren't you?
Yes, I am. Since I spoke out, my mother has been put in a very difficult position by the church in that she is basically being faced with a situation where, as a Scientologist, and she is a dedicated Scientologist, she cannot continue with her services in Scientology while staying in connection with me, based on the fact that I've spoken out about the abuses I experienced in the Sea Org.
So are they putting you under pressure to not talk out again?
Well, they are... Let's put it this way, through my mother, they are putting me under pressure to not speak out because they're putting her in a horrific position where she has to choose between her spiritual faith, which is really important to her, and her connection with her daughter.
So given what you're going through, the pressure of having to not speak to your mother again, why are you continuing to speak out? Because I feel it is really, really unfair, first of all, that my mother should be put in such a position. And when I've been told to my face that there is no policy of disconnection and then the absolute opposite is being presented to me, I feel I have to say something and I have to speak out because it's not right and I'm not the only person that's going through this. What does the policy of disconnection do to families who've been involved with Scientology? Well, it has devastating effects on families. It separates families, it rips them apart. And so we hear of stories of people not even knowing that their children have died. That's right. Yeah. Because of the policy of disconnection. That's right. Kerry, have you got a question or a comment?
Well, look, I just first of all like to say congratulations for having the courage to do what you're doing, both in terms of leaving, which we talked a little bit earlier about how hard all that is, and so to do that, and also to have the courage to stand up and do what you're doing now. I mean, there's been some stuff in the paper again about Suri being groomed to be the world leader of this organisation. I mean, that was kind of the thinking. Do you think that they would have been planning that far ahead for someone like that who's 6 years old? Look, you know, obviously I can only give you my opinion. Yep, sure. I don't know for sure, but I wouldn't be surprised, and yes, it is the kind of thing that they would plan ahead. You know, I mean, when I was in the Sea Org, they were talking about the return of Ron Hubbard. So it wouldn't surprise me, yeah. Romana, you talked before about being sent down to the engine room. Now, you were aboard a ship called the Free Winds, where they train a lot of Scientologists at very high levels. I think one of Tom Cruise's, maybe his 40th birthday party was on the Free Winds. What's the engine room, and why do you get sent to the engine room? Basically, if you are in what they call ethics trouble, so if you're doing something against command intention, so you're not doing what they want you to do, basically, there's various levels of, pressure put on you to come back into line. And one of these things is to go down to the engine room and clean, paint, remove rust, work under the deck plates, work in the tubes, all that. Well, I've done all of those things. So, and it's dangerous? Dangerous work? Well, yeah, I mean, it's more the mind control aspect of it. I think it's mentally dangerous. I think it's I don't think it's physically dangerous necessarily, but it's very much you go down there until you do what they want you to do. And that
you know, I definitely experience pretty...
So why don't people walk away from that situation? Why don't they leave if they're being abused?
Well, it's I know that's hard for some people to understand, but having experienced it myself, it's like, because you're in that mind control of, you know, this is the only way to spiritual freedom, and you've accepted that and you believe that, you feel if you do something against the organisation that you're going to have your spiritual freedom taken away from you.
So how did you get out? Sorry, I mean, I know it's pretty blunt, but how did you, I mean, what happened that made you say, I'm not doing this anymore?
Look, it was a slow incremental realisation up to a crisis point where I realised that my mind was not my own. And eventually, after trying to leave many, many times unsuccessfully, I managed to leave. So, yeah.
And how did you leave the Free Winch, the ship?
Well,
because they take your passports.
Yeah. I had to go through their process of leaving. I did try to escape at one point unsuccessfully, but I finally managed to get through their whole scrutinisation and sec checking, etc., and leave. So they allowed me to go, but this was after 5 years of trying. You know,
there are a lot of celebrities in Scientology. Tom Cruise, John Travolta. Is that a tactical thing that the Scientologists kind of go out to recruit big names in order to kind of build the movement? Or
from my understanding, I've never worked with celebrities in that way, but from my understanding, there are policies around, you know, the benefits of having opinion leaders, which is what they would call it in Scientology. And
I think it's a fact that there was a certain acting school in California that a number of actors went through and became Scientologists, and there were Scientologists teaching at that acting school.
Yeah, look, I can't comment on that because I don't know much about it, but I have heard of that, such things like that.
Well, Romana, thanks very much for coming in and telling us your story tonight on The Drum.